Right, it is 7:30 a.m. East African time, and a beautiful song there by Travis. He's very intentional in everything that he does, even in our lives. All right, promised you that we are back. We'll be looking at what's being reported in the dailies and the Standard. The headline, experts, Ruto projects freeze to slow economy. Economists say Treasury decision to halt financing of some projects will weaken economy due to reduced cash flow to the private sector. 1.3 trillion shillings, the value of projects that have stalled for receiving token budget allocations or failed for various reasons. And then 47.6 billion missed revenue collection targets by October 2023. And I see a quote there by Treasury CS Njogona Ndongo. The government will continue to emphasize policy measures such as the zero-based budgeting process and adoption of the no new projects. That story you can read on page 6. Now, it's a big day today.
Yeah.
And it's a big day for students who, especially candidates who sat for their KCPE exams. This is because the Form 1 selection starts today, and the results will be, the placement for Form 1 placement will be out today. And the question, they are saying key questions as Form 1 selection starts. Stakeholders want the exercise to be transparent and devoid of errors that clouded the announcement of KCPE results. They say more than 1 million candidates who sat the KCPE exam will know from today the secondary schools they be joining next month. And Kupet is urging the government to exercise fairness in selection. Sources indicate Form 1 students will be joining by the 15th of January.
15th.
Yes, 15th of January. So it will be a hectic week this week, even as the candidates get to know the schools, so that they also start early enough the preparation, so that that week commencing 15th January, they start reporting to their respective high schools. DP Gachagua is now telling Kenyans not to expect quick economic fixes. He says Kenyans should not expect quick fixes from the Kenya Kwanza administration. He said the government has rolled out strategic programs to revive the struggling economy. Read that story on page 2. I also see failed brakes overloading cited as victims narrate Mbooni crash. Passengers raise concerns about overloading, but their protests were ignored by the touts. Governor urged public service vehicle crews to observe traffic rules. And the number of passengers who perished in the accident in Mbooni along the Kikima-Kali Machakos Road stands at 12. That's a tragic story you can read on page 3 inside the Standard. I also see low gaps hurt rights violations payout plans. The committee is proposing a legislative framework to guide county governments in budgeting. The committee made recommendations following a petition which was filed by Machakos Senator. Read that story on page 11. And then inside the Standard, it's the health and science pullout, dissecting the world's 4th cause of death. For many years, the leading cause of adult respiratory disease mortality has been tuberculosis. However, the burden of other acute and chronic adult respiratory diseases has been rising throughout the world, and they are looking at a few with the help of an expert. That is the health and science pullout. And then the back page. It's the sports, and I was sharing with you, it's an exciting title there, headline. They're saying Jesus never fails. And then we see Gabriel Jesus there celebrating, pointing to the skies. And they're saying Arsenal had 25 shots in the match against Brighton. Aston Villa came from behind to dramatically beat Brentford. That is yesterday's matches. Arsenal 2, Brighton 0, Brentford 1, Aston Villa 2. West Ham versus Wolves, 3-0 it ended, and of course the late kickoff yesterday was at Anfield, and the noisemakers at Anfield were silenced. Man United walking away with a point. It was a barren draw against Liverpool. Will it be Kenya's Chega or Italian Eugenio? That is the question. After rolling twice in 2013 and 2015, they are talking of the Swedish pair of David von Schinkel and Fredrik von de Esch, determined to complete the classic rally. Back page, you can read that and much more.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for raising the standard. Anyway,
for the nation.
Yeah, for the nation. Nice. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, now let's focus on the nation that has had its standards raised. Now let's cross over to the Daily Nation. I'll be taking you through this, and the very first story on the front page is Azimio division, a blessing for Ruto. And I think we had that conversation last week, whereby we had the former president Uhuru Kenyatta, we had Martha Karua as well, and we just highlighted the story, and I think the whole conversation on the bipartisan talks has really raised a lot of just misunderstandings, especially between the Azimio la Umoja guys that are just within it, because it says that the split in Raila Odinga's Azimio la Umoja One coalition over the bipartisan talks report is proving to be a blessing for President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza, which has been under pressure from a united opposition 1 year after the hotly contested election. So we don't know what's going to happen moving forward, if at all wale ambao ni wa Azimio la Umoja One coalition are not agreeing, especially with the conversations regarding the bipartisan talks. But that is a story that you can find on page 4 and 5. And we had, just to highlight, we had retired President Uhuru Kenyatta. We had also NAK Kenya leader Martha Karua and DAP Kenya leader Eugene Wamalwa. Those were on the other side of the talks and did not agree with Raila's proposition. And we also see another story right here on the top page. Kenya moves to forestall diplomatic tiff with the DRC, a story you can find on page 6. All right, and when we get in now, I see on page 2 that Mulot cyber criminals use new tricks to evade arrest. Yeah, technology is really advancing day by day, and some suspects have relocated to Trans Nzoia, Kiambu, Nairobi, Kajiado, and Machakos counties. And we also see families long wait to know missing Meru bloggers' fate. You can look at that story. It is said that there was a mysterious disappearance regarding a blogger. So you can look at that story in the Daily Nation. That's on page 2. We also have page 3, laid back military chief Jen Ogola demystifying post. He was the chief guest during a students' mentorship forum in Muhoroni, and he displayed his soft side as he advised students on resilience, making right choices as well as sacrifices. That's a story you can find in detail on page 3. And on the story that we had mentioned that was on the top page, why split in Raila's Azimio over talks report is a blessing for Ruto. Kenya Kwanza, we see a united opposition would have given President William Ruto and his Kenya Kwanza administration a hard time to govern the country. But then when the opposition is not in unity, then what is going to happen? You can look at that story on page 4 as well as 5, just to see what is being said. And also on page 5, we see that Uhuru emerges as face of opposition. We see Jubilee Secretary General Jeremiah Kioni hints that Mr. Kenyatta could opt to lead a no vote against the document in a referendum. A story you can find on page 5 of the Daily Nation. And in other stories, state moves to avert diplomatic tiff with DRC over rebels. Prime CS says Kenya Kwanza government had nothing to do with the statements issued by DRC opposition leader. And of course, the Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, during a fundraiser for construction of an office, we see his word there. And he says that Kenya affirms its non-involvement in the internal affairs of DRC and commits to continue supporting the peace, security, and democratic consolidation of the country. A story you can look at on the page 6. And also we see media to blame for housing levy misinformation. Quite interesting here. President William Ruto says, would you rather I sit in Nairobi and see Kenya burn down or go to America? The levy suffered a hiccup when the court declared it unconstitutional, but state can collect cash. This is quite interesting. A story that you can find on page 7. Say setback, had all factors remained constant, all promises would have been fulfilled. I think it's a bit of a backlash here with the media. Media is to blame for misinformation, the housing levy misinformation. And lastly, on the Daily Nation, I see misery for patients in leased medical equipment impasse. So we see here that 2015 was the year when the Managed Equipment Service program was launched. The national government reckoned that leasing medical equipment would be cheaper than buying. So you can look at that story on page 9. And I think I've seen something quite interesting on the pullout. That is on I would say the junior sport, basically the magazine that goes to the children. That's the junior sport. I see here something quite interesting. It's just about career. That's I don't think that was on the junior, but it's in one of the pullouts. It was just talking about how people need to make sure that they are putting their career together, like in 2024. What's your career plan in 2024? And on the back page, we have Arteta pairing as Ghana's back on top. That's on the very back page. Okutoi shifts focus to second Tony at Nairobi club on the back page as well of the Daily Nation.
Right, you mentioned Arsenal at the top. Reminded me of the meme of that elephant on top of a tree. We don't know how it got there. Yeah, but one thing is for sure. Will have to come down. Anyway, the Business Daily, the headline, Kenya Power loses 10% of customers to private plants. On-use generation hits 402.3 megawatts. Solar photovoltaic generation, the most preferred by farms. So Kenya Power has lost up to 10.8% of customers. This is after farms dumped the national grid and started own power generation. According to EPRA data released last week, it shows that captive generation, which refers to own-use power production, increased to 402.3 megawatts during the 12-month period to June 2023 as more commercial and industrial consumers launch their plants. So you can read that on the front page and also continues on page 2. Then I see KRA builds new system for SMEs after e-Teams uproar. So this is what it means. Small businesses will only be required to show a record of transactions rather than generating electronic invoices, as the Kenya Revenue Authority works on a separate system to accommodate their operations. So if you're a small business, that affects you. And they're saying starting January next year, every transaction has to be backed by an electronic invoice, but the taxman wants to shield small businesses from this requirement owing to high compliance costs and concerns of gaps in technology adoption. So in the new system, whose rollout is yet to be approved, rather than generating and transmitting electronic invoices through the electronic tax invoice management system, e-Teams, small businesses will only show transactions. Yeah, so you can read more on page 2. I also see lobby routes for removal of EAC non-tariff barriers, why Kenya faces slim savings in 46 billion early Eurobond repay, and CBK seen cutting rates as global peers signal shift. So that is inside the Business Daily this morning.
All right, beautiful. So right about now, we're going to be having the video of the day in a short while. It's actually a Christmas song, so we'll just focus and listen to what message does it have, just to put us in the mood of Christmas.
It's a week too.
Yeah, it's a week too. Lest we forget.
Yes. Musisahau. Ni wiki moja tu.
I saw a meme. I don't know how the meme ends. But it was like, if you're working next week, that was last week.
Yes,
Like
yes.
people, like hii wiki,
Yeah.
watu wengi,
Yeah.
they are no longer working. Yes.
This week, actually, so many institutions are,
Yes,
are
are
closing.
closed,
Others have already closed, so that it gives you
Yeah.
enough time for you to travel. You know, there's lots of
Yes,
traveling.
that's true.
But then, of course, there are those who are saying, with the economic situation, and of course, you know, with the transportation, PSVs and all, it will be expensive.
That's true.
So
hikes.
you might
Yeah.
decide, instead of going now when the fares and everything are high,
Yeah.
sinaweza enda tu huko Feb. Yeah.
You've really thrown it like Gigi, you're not even talking of January.
Now January is back to school. Being realistic again.
As a parent.
As a parent.
You get this thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah, you see, for you can't relate. So you are like, for you can't relate.
Oh,
yeah.
Jesus. Hey, jamani.
A time is coming for you.
To relate.
Yeah, you will, definitely.
I will relate 100%.
Yes.
But I think there's some news you touched on the accident that has happened that has now claimed about 12 lives.
Yeah.
I think it's important for us to insist on people being really, really careful.
Yeah.
And I mean, during the festivities, right now we have gone away from what the season really is for, and it's partying, it's drunkenness and whatnot.
Yeah.
And this is a very vital, you know, season, because you look at children, they're at home, and drugs have been introduced very early, especially with teenagers right now. I think it's important for parents to be really, really vigilant and to really have these conversations with their children.
True.
Because most times utapata mtoto hata ako tu kwa nyumba lakini ataenda sherehe amekuja usiku. You just don't know what's going to happen, because there's a lot of chaos, there's excitement, and it's dangerous. So I think we need to put in extra effort and care, and to pray so much even for our families, because even just this morning I was telling you we encountered an accident on our way here, and it was so depressing. Like, I had to pray, God help me to really like, it was bad, it was really bad. So people really need to be careful. The drivers, we need to really, really put in extra care, especially during this season.
Let's remember the reason for the season.
That's true.
Yeah. We can take the break now.
Yes.
Get the video of the day.
Yes, and
Awesome.
then come back.